There are few offenders more infamous than Ted Bundy, born Theodore Robert Bundy. In 1989, he confessed to 30 slayings in 7 states, although investigators suspect the exact figure is closer to 100. The timeline of the chilling story of Bundy's spree documents everything from when he took his first life to the infamous night he spent in the Chi Omega sorority house to his girlfriend, Elizabeth Klupfer, reporting him to the police. At the end of his run of vicious activity, Bundy stood trial and was sentenced to capital punishment. Before he passed, he sat down with investigators and detailed the events of his life, his reasons, and his actions. On August 31, 1961, when Bundy was 14 years old, 8-year-old Anne Marie Burr went missing from her home in Tacoma, Washington. While Bundy repeatedly denied involvement in the incident, many believe Anne Marie was his first victim. Bundy only lived a few blocks away and was up early to deliver newspapers on the morning of her disappearance. In 2011, a sample of Bundy's DNA was submitted for testing in the hope of finally determining whether Bundy was involved in Anne Marie's case. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough measurable DNA collected at the scene to provide an answer. Bundy's first known attack was against 18-year-old Karen Sparks in January 1974. He broke into her apartment while she was asleep. Though Karen survived, she spent over a week unresponsive and was left permanently disabled. In early February 1974, less than a month after Karen Sparks, Bundy committed his first known slaying. He broke into Linda Ann Healy's apartment. She was a 21-year-old psychology major and local radio reporter. Along with taking Healy, Bundy allegedly dressed her in the clothes she'd worn the previous evening, as the entire outfit was missing from her room despite her having changed before bed. Her remains were discovered a year later on Taylor Mountain, alongside multiple others. During the summer of 1974, Bundy seized several young women at the University of Washington. Each of them looked very similar, with long, center-parted hair. Bundy's method involved him inventing an impairment. He usually had his arm in a sling or had crutches and a leg cast. Bundy then asked women for help carrying books to his tan Volkswagen Beetle, often parked some distance away in a remote location. Some women were fortunate enough to get away, either declining his advances or growing suspicious and retreating. During those infamous months in 1974, however, Bundy assaulted Donna Gail Manson on March 12th, Susan Elaine Rancourt on April 17th, Roberta Kathleen Parks on May 6th, Brenda Carroll Ball on June 1st, and Jorgan Hawkins on June 11th. The Pacific Northwest slayings culminated on July 14, 1974, when Bundy seized 2 women, 23-year-old Janice Ann Ott and 18-year-old Denise Marie Naslund, from Lake Sammamish State Park in Washington. They disappeared from a crowded shore in the middle of the day. Several women reported encounters with Bundy that day. They told detectives about a young man with his arm in a sling who'd introduced himself as Ted and asked for help unloading a sailboat from his Volkswagen Beetle. By summer 1974, Bundy's spree was generating lots of press coverage, and a growing sense of panic and fear gripped young women in the Pacific Northwest. A sketch of the serial slayer and details about his appearance and car were released to the public, which led to numerous people coming forward and naming Bundy as the perpetrator. The police sometimes received 200 tips each day, including some from Bundy's girlfriend, Elizabeth Klupfer, and University of Washington psychology professor Ann Rule. Nothing came of the tips, and Bundy moved to Salt Lake City, Utah, where he began studying law. Bundy moved to Utah at the height of his notoriety in the Pacific Northwest to study law. Shortly after the move, young women began to disappear. The first of Bundy's Utah victims was a hitchhiker he left in the Snake River. Her identity remains unknown. On October 2nd, Bundy ambushed 16-year-old Nancy Wilcox in Holiday, Utah. Hours before his capital punishment sentence was carried out, Bundy indicated the alleged location of her body on a map for investigators, though she has yet to be recovered. On October 18th, he slew a police chief's daughter, 17-year-old Melissa Ann Smith. His next known mark was 17-year-old Laura Ann Aim on October 31st. In November 1974, Carol Duranch was almost taken by Bundy, but she escaped. Bundy approached Duranch at a shopping mall in Utah, introducing himself as a police officer and claiming someone had tried to break into her car. He asked her to accompany him to the police station, which she agreed to do. Once Duranch was in his vehicle, Bundy attempted to handcuff her and incapacitate her with a crowbar. She fought back and escaped, quickly seeking help from law enforcement. Bundy's girlfriend, Elizabeth Klepfer, went to the police several times, urging them to look into Bundy. She first reported him due to odd behavior in the summer of 1974, and again when women began disappearing from his new home in Utah. Although she had her suspicions, Klepfer remained in a relationship with Bundy. In an interview, she stated, "In my own mind, there were coincidences that seemed to tie him in, yet when I would think about our day-to-day relationship, there was nothing there that would lead me to think that he was capable of doing something like that." Despite being based in Utah, Bundy was active in Colorado in 1975. The women affected included 23-year-old Karen Campbell on January 12th, 26-year-old Julie Cunningham on March 15th, 24-year-old Denise Lynn Oliverson on April 6th, 12-year-old Lynette Dawn Culver on May 6th, and 15-year-old Susan Curtis on June 28th. Bundy confessed to Curtis's slaying just moments before capital punishment was carried out. Bundy was detained for the first time on August 16, 1975, by Highway Patrol Officer Bob Hayward. In a chance encounter, Hayward took a wrong turn and caught Bundy sitting in his car outside a neighbor's house. When he saw Hayward, Bundy sped off. Hayward caught up with Bundy and searched the vehicle. Inside the car, he found handcuffs, pantyhose, a ski mask, a crowbar, and an ice pick. Bundy was booked for evading a police officer, but there was insufficient evidence to hold him. In September 1975, officers took possession of Bundy's Volkswagen after he sold it. Inside, they discovered strands of hair, including from Carol Duranch, the woman who escaped Bundy at the shopping mall. In October, Duranch identified Bundy in a lineup. Bundy was charged with kidnapping and attempted assault. In 1976, he stood trial and was sentenced to up to 15 years. On June 6, 1977, Bundy escaped from a courthouse in Aspen. He was representing himself, and his handlers trusted him without restraints. Bundy asked if he could visit the library during a recess. After the judge permitted him, Bundy jumped out the 30-foot-high window. The community of Aspen put Bundy on T-shirts and named food after him, making a joke of his disappearance. He was captured 8 days later at a roadblock on a mountain pass. Bundy's trial resumed once he was recaptured, but in December 1977 he escaped again, with more success. As it was the holiday season, the facility was short-staffed and Bundy took advantage. Using a tool gained from a pier, he sawed a hole in the ceiling and climbed out via the opening. Bundy wound up in the head jailer's apartment. After dressing in some of his clothes, he walked out undetected. On January 15, 1978, Bundy was hiding in Tallahassee, Florida. He broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University, where he beat Margaret Bowman as she slept. Bundy then assaulted Lisa Levy. In the adjacent bedroom, he attacked Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler. The latter two survived but were left harmed. After leaving Chi Omega sorority house, Bundy accosted another FSU student, Cheryl Thomas. On February 8, 1978, Bundy approached 14-year-old Leslie Parmenter in a parking lot but retreated when her older brother arrived. On February 9th, 12-year-old Kimberly Diane Leach disappeared from Lake City Junior High School, having been taken by Bundy. Bundy took a car and fled Tallahassee on February 12th. 3 days later, he was stopped by Officer David Lee. Bundy fought the officer and tried to run, but Lee soon apprehended him. Bundy reportedly said he wished Lee had ended his life instead. In June 1979, Bundy stood trial for the Chi Omega charges. Bundy chose to handle much of his defense. A pre-trial deal was negotiated that would have seen Bundy admit to the slayings of Levy, Bowman, and Leach in return for a 75-year sentence. In the end, Bundy backed out of it. Mike Minerva, who defended Bundy, said, "It made him realize he was going to have to stand up in front of the whole world and say he was guilty. He just couldn't do it." On July 24, 1979, Bundy was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder, and 2 counts of burglary. Judge Edward Cowart imposed capital punishment. 6 months later, Bundy was convicted of the abduction and slaying of Kimberly Leach. On February 10, 1980, Bundy received another capital punishment sentence. One final bizarre turn marked the trial. Bundy took advantage of a Florida law that states a public declaration, properly phrased, in an open courtroom in the presence of court officers would make the marriage ceremony legal. Bundy asked Carol Ann Boone, who had testified on his behalf during both trials, to marry him. She accepted and they were legally wed. 9 years later, on January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy's capital punishment sentence was carried out at Florida State Prison.